press the button on the
So
thing.
somehow my boss connected his head and he was going to do a web demo with us.
It's too advanced for me. That's what those
As I found out, we're going to meet with one of the volunteer coaches.
Did you get your koozie back? They can't do it.
We'll do it.
Here's a bunch of practical.
And so it's been really fun for me. I've been focusing on rowing and rugby throughout the country because I think in those cultures they can be under-resourced sports, and they can be sports where you have lots of different lineups, lots of different people groups, lots of different travel, waivers, calendar, chats, and the idea of all that coming to a Facebook group and a text message and a WhatsApp and a GroupMe, it makes your head spin. And so what we do is we have set up both a browser and an app that are free and customizable to your team, club, or boathouse. So in the last year, we've had Saugatuck, San Diego, Row America, some of the Greenwich and Stanford teams. I live in Connecticut. Our company is based in Long Island, and everything we do is in-house in New York. So our software engineers, the two co-founders, and us as a sales team. It's been the last year and a half that I've been with the company, and they've been around for the last 3 years. So that's a really quick overview about SportsYou. But I just want to show you a couple of the key features and then let you know that there's no cost to us helping you set up your teams or your boathouses, or if maybe you work for a director of operations that you want them to see this because you think, oh my gosh, this would make it so much easier for us. Then we can either set up a time with them face-to-face, we can do a web demo, or one of the two of us can actually kind of fill in some of the content, link your calendars for you, and then hand it off. So it's not adding to your plate. It really is kind of helping streamline. I work with high schools, colleges, youth, all the way up through some of the national teams, and we have found that kind of once you start seeing the features and playing around with them with your specific team's needs, that then picking up the phone and saying, what do you want to use? How can we set this up? Works really well. So, you guys with me so far? Awesome. All right. So, SportsYou, as you can see, my card is in front of you. The koozies and pens are yours to take. I'm going to show you a couple different accounts so you can just get our main features. But the main idea is that you can set up as many closed private teams and groups as you need. Right? So if you want to have Masters 7 a.m., Masters 5 a.m., junior girls, junior boys, junior parents, varsity women, JV women, whatever is the better solution for you, you can set them up, and you'll have on the app and on the browser, you'll have kind of a list of teams and groups. You can manage as many as you want, and you can make other people admins. So if you have assistant coaches, if there are captains that you trust certain years as far as content and culture, if you have others that you're like, nope, it's totally based on kind of each year if you have a team parent that you trust to make an admin, or if you say, you know what, I want the parents to have their own place to communicate and get organized and schedule regatta, food, and rides and all that stuff, have them set their own group up on SportsYou. You can pop in and check it, and you can turn the notifications off for us, which is nice. Steph and I were talking on the drive up. She's like, I love that I can tell parents and kids to lose my number, and if they need to communicate with me, to do it on our SportsYou team page, because everything is in one place.
You can set it to be an alert essentially as a text message. So like if somebody's trying to get to you, it comes to you as a text, but they're not texting your phone or calling your phone at 10 p.m. on a Friday or Saturday night. And then I also am a personal trainer, so I have clients, clients' kids, other trainers, coaches, parents, kids. So there's this long list of people that I'm scrolling through each day. So if I can take more than half of them off and just put them somewhere else, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a demo account, this Naughty River Rowing Club that a few of us who use the platform in other places, Dan Walsh has been kind of one of our early users and power adopters over the last year and put his whole boathouse on it. So this is an example of the feed. So think of the feed as like a virtual bulletin board. Anything you post on here will go out to every member of the team or group. It looks like a closed private Facebook group as far as just clean functionality, but it is, you can drop links in. You can actually be out in a launch or next to an erg and film from within the app and drop it if you're trying to teach technique. Or if you want to send a YouTube video of this is how you erg, or if you are at a regatta and you're filming, you can drop in links. If they're longer videos, we've worked really hard to keep our uploads high resolution. So if they're longer videos, use Vimeo, use YouTube, use Huddle, whatever it is you're using as a coach, and just drop the link in here. So anything on your feed will go to all of your athletes. I do want to pop in and show you one of the ways one of our high school teams uses this. Maritime Rowing Club Boys High Performance. You can see that there's 7 coaches and 52 athletes in this one team, and they require their athletes to post their workouts that they do outside.
She only can see this as well because she's an admin of the group.
Yeah, I'm an
So
admin of this group, so
nobody
this
else
is not
can
public
actually,
to
like,
anybody else.
You can't search for other teams. You can't search for athletes. It's all completely closed.
Yep. So I love, like, this is a high school captain saying, if you missed your PR today, use it as fuel to push harder on Thursday. Also, Secret Santa gifts are due Friday, so do that, Tyler. So that's kind of for their team culture. And then the coaches post announcements in here. And then what's great is they have to post screenshots of ergs, running, whatever they do, they post here for workout accountability when they're not at the courthouse. We also, going back to that demo, I'll show you really quickly. In addition to the feed, we have the ability to chat individual members, and those will be in your kind of chat thread. They'll be organized by the logo, by the athlete's name, by the parent's name, so you can do that here. You can or do not have to add people as a friend on SportsYou. So if you have other coaches at other boathouses and they're not in the same teams you are, but you also want to keep that communication on SportsYou, you can friend each other on the platform. Steph was saying one of her friends who's another coach had posted erg times, and she loves seeing that because she's with a newer, younger program, and so now she had kind of a benchmark for her training season. And then beyond that, I love the calendar system. I've been a high school varsity coach down all the way to like intro to premier. So for both parents of little kids through high school athletes that I expect to learn accountability, we use this calendar, and you can create an event. You can import calendars, you can export or subscribe to this one. But let's say we were going to put like the 2K test, and I want to tell everybody about it, and we'll say it's at community rowing here. Set the time for it. If I want to make it recurring, we want this to happen every Wednesday, for the next 5 weeks. Done. And I can add a description of equipment they need to bring or not bring. I can put a notification, a reminder, email, phone, text, or both. And then I can choose who's invited to that. Maybe you're doing this with a certain lineup, or you're seat racing. And then what I also love is you can add files. So if you have nutrition information or workout plans or kind of best practices, like I remember our coach in college before 2K always sent out an inspirational quote or just a strategy for our split times. This can be on there. Everything kind of lives in that one calendar event. And then what's nice is everyone can RSVP. All they have to do is open the app, tap yes, no, or maybe, and you as the admin will see. So again, for rowing specifically, like I started rowing masters last year for the first time, and it blew my mind to not have a set lineup and not have races we were training together for, and not know who was going to come that day. Like it really, really messed with me.
That's how Jen and I actually met.
Yeah.
Was I texted her at 10 p.m. and said, "Can you come to practice tomorrow at 5? Hi, I'm Stephanie.
Yeah.
I know that you used to row. We know through like 5 mutual friends." And she was like, "Who's in the lineup?" I was like,
We don't know. What are you racing?
I know we have 7
okay.
people.
Yeah.
We need an 8th. So like,
Yeah. So I went, and I was in tears. I was so happy to be back in it, but I almost had a heart attack at the regatta. So I think with masters especially, the idea that you could say as a culture of your club, hey, we expect everyone to RSVP by 5 a.m. We're gonna launch at 5:30. That you can then do that on this platform. And if they don't hit yes, no, or maybe, and they don't change their update that morning, then they irk. That's just a practical use case you can do. We've seen a few different masters clubs use it so far and love it. Even things like, hey, I'm already at the Charles, I forgot my riggers. Can you bring them? They're not on the trailer, and they did. Like that kind of stuff was again so quick and simple. The other fun thing from a coaching standpoint is media. Both for team culture and for just needing to share information quickly. Like I said, you can share videos, photos. You can give a parent access to those albums. So if they want to do a senior night video, or if masters want to do like a quick slideshow of an event that you've won or gone to, I think it's great free marketing. I think if the downside to miscommunication in rowing is there's probably a nearby club that people can switch to. The upside to being super organized and kind of building a culture with a platform like this is people want to stay a part of it. And so I think especially in the Northeast, people are constantly comparing products and constantly comparing options. And I've seen clubs across many sports that really, really integrate this, and parents are really stoked about it. So let us know how we can help. There is a free cloud storage system on here too. If you guys do evaluations, if you share workouts, if you have all your boathouse waivers, you can drop them onto individual team pages. The last thing how many of you guys oversee multiple teams or lineups or different? Okay, so most of you. So the other nice thing is when you're on the app on your phone and you just say like all sessions canceled today, stay safe in the storm, and post your workouts. You can share that with friends, so that would go personally to anyone your friends on the platform, or you can share it with all your teams at once, which I won't share with King because that's a live one, or Row America. Sorry, Steph, which ones are not real accounts for you?
That's good.
Just those two. Okay, so we'll like all three groups, and then
Those
again,
kids actually won't show up tomorrow. So even if there's no storm, they're gonna be like,
Steph
sweet.
said no. So you can
Coach King, so they definitely won't come.
disable comments. That's again your preference if you want to do that. We've built in a lot of admin features working with schools. You can have to approve posts if you want to. You can take people on or off admin rights. I can teach you all that when you get specific into using it, and then you hit done, you double check it, you hit post, and now that's gone into all three groups. So if any of us had joined that coaches roundtable already, it would be on the wall, that announcement would be there, we'd all have our phones pinged. And the same thing if she went into the calendar and deleted that 2K event, it would tell everybody to notify all attendees of change. So, like I said, as a coach and athlete, I love it. I use it for everything. My women's league soccer team, my master's rowing, the kids that I coach, it's all in one organized place. So, any questions? I know it was a lot in a short amount of time. Yeah. Oh, no, you're
Oh, no, I was
Hi. Hi.
Can you, so if, say I use Google Calendar for all my stuff.
Yep.
Will this sync to that, or does
Yep.
my Google Calendar only go to the app?
Both. So, you can subscribe to the team calendar, so you can take everything you put in SportsYou and copy the URL into Google, Microsoft Outlook, or iCal.
Oh, cool.
And then you also have the ability now, this is the fun thing about our tech team being in-house, like if all of you guys implement this for your spring season, and you stay in touch with me and give feedback of like, I love these 9 things, it would change my life if you had this other thing too. Our dev team is in-house, like we've built a lot of features based on our users' feedback. We'll pick one of these clubs again to show you the second thing you asked. So if you want to import an external calendar, so let's say CRI has a platform where your high schools or your colleges have someplace they do registration and calendars, you can import or sync, and you can choose which one you do. So
You can even use this like as a Dropbox for your parents. So like if parents want to, like you could create like a racing team photos group. And like all the parents and all the kids can upload all of the photos, and then you can actually, there's no like, you don't have to, you just save them to your device, so there's no like super convoluted way of doing it. You just click the 3 little dots and click save to device, so it's like it's yours.
Wow.
And that's a quick way of sharing.
Yeah.
We also used it kind of as a trial at a regatta. We took a link that had the you could only access the link from SportsYou for the results, which was kind of hard to do because like everybody's like, where are the results? Why didn't SportsYou post them yet? And we're like, well, we just kind of have, it's not us, but like, but it's a quick way to share like any regatta updates, any, there was a delay, so we had the regatta organizer like post, hey, there's a 20-minute delay, launch your boats 20 minutes later. It goes to all the coaches' phones that subscribe to it. So coaches that didn't subscribe were like, what's going on? And it's like, well, this was part of the, kind of onboarding of like, we're trying to get everybody to just use it and see how it is. And then also we had some photographers out there that were sharing pictures. So the kids instantly had pictures of their race like that minute because we had the cameras uploading to the SportsYou. So it's a pretty cool, way of using it. But
how many of you guys host events or do fundraising challenges or So what I did with rugby, I work with a nonprofit in New York City that's under VITA. So it's Row New York, Beat the Streets Wrestling, and Play Rugby USA. So Play Rugby USA put all of their age grade development and high performance onto SportsYou. So all their teams, all the community stuff they do with the PSAL, all their coaching groups, everything's on SportsYou. They hosted a New York City Cup on Randall's Island. So what they said is every coach that registered a team joined this SportsYou group, and so throughout the entire day, all the flyers, the waivers, the reminder for the rules, just in case the refs needed to check, and any of the awards they gave that day. So you'll see there's 85 coaches in this group, and they had their phones on them, so if there was a field change, if something was starting late, same thing for regatta. same thing, like Row New York just did a big Christmas fundraising event for erging. Pictures from the event, social things afterwards, links to fundraising. All of that can be a group, and you just give out the code and people join. So yeah, if you guys want help setting that up, leading up to a regatta or a race, we're happy to do that too. So, questions? All right, let us know best time, and please reach out, and I'll probably give these guys an email to forward to you guys so they have the info. But thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome. So do you guys want to do just a quick introduction of what you're going to go over, and then pretty small groups, we can break up 4 and 4 and do that. You want to start?
Sure. Hi. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kara. I coach here at CRI. I also coach the LaSalle College Crew Club over in Auburndale. Yeah, this is Fergus. So at Joy of Sculling, 2 of the sessions that I went to that I really took something away from were implementing mental training and conversations and consequences. And I try to be, really mindful and focus on, mental training, mindfulness, things like that. Tim Pinot, who was the keynote speaker, spoke of it in his keynote, and then also had a breakout session, and just really talked about the importance of mental training in addition to physical training. I think as coaches we focus on, strength and conditioning, cardio, and all of that stuff, and sort of try to incorporate mindfulness and mental training a little bit, like, hey, why don't we focus on this and have some quiet time? But it's not as often as we focus on, making sure that they're physically trained. So I just want to talk more about that, and then also Phoebe Bryans gave a great presentation about conversations and consequences. I am someone who has no filter, and I can have difficult conversations because I have no filter. Sometimes they don't come across as polite as they could. So it's having conversations with respect, and also kind of finding the tools that you need to have those conversations if you're not as blunt as I might be. So that's what I'll be talking about as we continue through the session tonight.
My name is Davey. I coach here at CRI and also at Cambridge Virgin Latin High School. When you go to conferences, I feel like there's like 3 types of presentations. There's things that like you went to, and then the end of the day, it's like, okay, that's nice. Okay. And there's some things where you go in and you have an idea that you were starting to sort of embark on or embrace, be confirmed in front of you by someone who's like an expert. Like, yes, okay, I was going down the right track. And then there's things that just like blow your mind, right? That's kind of like how conferences go. And I remember last year there were like 1 or 2 things that I genuinely used out of everything in the conference, because there's so much information you often don't. We all absorb it as coaches, and then it's hard to take that and put all that through a funnel and get it back out to the kids or adults, whatever the case may be. So anyway, in thinking about the talks that I went to, I think I had 2 or one that was definitely yes, this confirms like everything I wanted to do, and that's the Leo, whose background is in strength and conditioning with a lot of emphasis on kettlebells. So talking about the kettlebell swing and various usage of that in training, and how much of an advantage that can be if done well, is one of the topics. Nolte also confirmed a lot of the thoughts I had about breathing, but I think that there were also there was sort of like a twist on his presentation, which is to say that breathing has become a topic in the last couple of years that's a little bit more, people are starting to focus on it, and in the end he kind of was like, well, don't worry about it, they'll breathe. This was like a summary, like, they'll breathe. They'll breathe. So that was kind of a funny, like, we sit through all this and all of a sudden it's like, what? Oh, okay, that's, so that was both confirming and sort of like, oh, aha. And then Simon discussed coaching the coxswain. And I think that this is a place where I've felt weak in the past, and this is gonna be definitely like what I use. This will be the take-home thing that I use after this. So just breathing, kettlebell training, and how specifically to coach a cox, not a general, yes, we need to coach the cox, but an actual formula to use with them and to give them. Those are the things I will talk to you about.
Cool. So we'll break up into two groups, two sides. Maybe we'll go 4 and 4, and if you two guys want to jump in as well, we'll go 5 and 5. So go ahead and break it up.
Cool. And then we'll switch halfway
Feel free to
through,
get up
right?
and
So you don't have
get
to,
more food and
feel like
beer
you're
and-
picking at that.
Yeah. You only get in one.
There's plenty of chicken tacos and beer courtesy Craft Beer Cellars and SportsYou.
I think it was.
Beef? I thought it was like pulled pork or something, I don't know.
Yeah, like chicken tacos, pull something, pull meat.
I don't know. It's late.
No. If I had gone to training this morning, it'd be even later.
3 days ago, I got 10.5 hours of sleep.
How many?
10.5. I went to bed at 6. To be honest, lately I've been shooting for like
get to
9.
actually have a round
Like a bedtime
table.
of like.
Oh, yeah, like, I'm gonna be here and.
Well, I didn't have to get up early. I just pulled out the closet.
The red ones, yeah, I know.
I woke up at 1 and I was like,
All right. So
I think
So we could do this in 2 ways. I can kind of summarize a little bit more of what was in those. I also wrote up some discussion questions. I can send you later, I guess. But do you want the discussion questions first and to discuss, or do you want a summary of what was in the summary? Summary. Okay. So DeLeo is a
What's his full name?
right. It's funny because in the presentations, it only
Or is it
has-
like share where, I mean, he doesn't really have like, it's just.
No, it's share. It's
Oh,
like
really?
share.
Alright.
I can do you one better.
Okay.
If you Google DeLeo training,
Okay.
it's gonna come up. Joe DeLeo.
Joe.
But so Joe DeLeo has a website, and you need to go to it, and you need to spend a lot of time there because it's so much content. And his YouTube channel, if you like YouTube University, it's got some good stuff on it. And he's got a favorites list of other people's stuff that he likes. Okay, so YouTube University, Joe DeLeo. So basically, he was getting at, we have external work and internal work. So external work, there's a lot of tests that we have in rowing, 2K tests, 6K tests, 5K tests, 10 stroke max wattage, whatever. That gives us output, what energy system output an athlete has. Tell us where they're getting that power from inside of their body. And so he had a couple of, he was talking a little bit about the internal work. So where are the athletes generating their power? They generate it in their legs, in their trunk, in their core, or in their arms. And to investigate that, he was looking at 3 different tests. So a high jump, so stationary, from stationary to high jump, to look at the output of their legs. There was a prone med ball throw, so they start laying out flat with their legs flat, and they sit up into a sit-up and see how far they could throw a med ball. And then the last one was a seated, stationary with your back up against a wall med ball throw. And so he was comparing those 3 measurements to see if there were drastic discrepancies between the 2. Where it got a little fuzzy in the presentation, correct me, you were in the same, I think you were in the same group, not just the same. Like, they presented everything a couple times. It was really unclear which one was like inches or feet, and like how that related to how the tests were supposed to compare. And this was supposed to be like a proprietary test from Strong First, which is a kettlebell federation. So there's different kinds. The kettlebell is this Russian exercise, and there's different companies that
Are
have
there any like
gone commercial with
instances that you
kettlebell
have had
work,
coaches
and so
or
Strong
athletes,
First is one of the
where,
kettlebell federations that
need to
puts
have
out
a
certifications
difficult
for
conversation
personal
with
trainers,
someone,
different things like
whether
that.
it's another
And so
coach,
he
an athletic director,
is a
parent,
Strong First certified trainer, and so he had
kind
gone
of
to the
took
Strong
away
First
some tips from,
conference, and
as
that
the
was information that was
conversation
coming out or bounced back through the strong organization. So he didn't have the full information before us at that time. Basically, the idea was, we have all of our herding tests that measure external work. Should we look at internal work and see which part of the bodies the athletes are using for strength? Does that make sense?
Is the benefit just to see if they might be underusing one part or overusing
So
another?
if you're
Okay.
testing, each of those tests is really against themselves, not necessarily between athletes. Less
It's
between
less about between athletes.
than to see if you're underutilizing one specific.
Yeah, say we've got a novice girl who, let's say her name's Isla, and I'm gonna use a hypothetical novice girl that we're not coaching right now. And she has a high seated throw, med ball throw, and a high prone med ball crunch throw. But relative to that, for whatever reason, her high jump is oddly low. We know, hey, she's not getting connected with her legs for whatever reason the legs are being used. Or then you have another girl, say, Molly, who's got good legs, on this test. The leg score and the arm score seem to be, all right. And then for whatever reason, the core score is just like, or she couldn't even complete the test as instructed. Right, so then it's like, okay, well, that's an area that we need to double down with this particular athlete in terms of they're either recruiting that muscle group wrong, or they're it's not there. Is that?
And I thought what was interesting too was, I think the high jump was inches, and then the other two were feet, if I remember correctly. And all the numbers worked out that they should be within plus or minus 5 to 10 of one another. So, yeah, so it was actually, that's why it was so interesting, was because the throw was, you got 15 feet, 15 inches for your vertical, like, they should all be within this range, and then whatever fell outside that range was a really easy indicator of what would be. So you sort of just have these 3 numbers, and you're like, all right, well, now I know which section I need to work on, so kind of almost like a screening tool than a comparison amongst athletes.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
So that was a big chunk of what Delia was saying. And another, basically the other chunk was kettlebell swings are the magic bullet if you do them right. But if you do them right. And I had brought up a bunch of kettlebell swing fails. But we won't go there. But here's the Delia website.
You say that like that's a bad thing.
No, I wouldn't want to give him credit for being Canadian if he's.
Again, not exactly.
I don't know. I didn't go for that. I should have gone to the session that I went to about communicating don't. So then his presentation on breathing. We had 2 different
And I think
sessions.
one of the things that maybe.
One of the 2 sessions,
I didn't know.
there were 2 different sessions. Okay, I went to one. Obviously, I didn't go to both of them. People from the different groups were talking later and felt like they got 2 totally different sentences from. And I don't think it had to do with Nolte. I think it had to do with the other people who were in the room, interrupting or asking questions or offering their own knowledge, as it were. Basically, Nolte's take on it was breathing rate is tied to stroke rate. We've seen the stroke rate come up in racing in the last decade. The stroke rate may not go any higher because the breathing rate is tied to the stroke rate. You can't breathe more than, basically it was 2 breath cycles per stroke was the cap according to Nolte. If you think about it, I mean, how many times are you really gonna breathe effectively at like a 40? Or,
So by 2
or a
breath cycles.
36, 2 breath cycles per stroke. And he asked the group, when do you teach people to breathe? And everyone had a different take on it. Basically, the Nolte's conclusion was that it's an inhale. Inhale and exhale are with catch and finish. Or no, exhale is with catch and finish. Inhale is on the recovery and the drive.
You sure about that?
What's that?
You sure about that?
I'm gonna double check it in my notes. But it was not what I would have. It's not what I taught previously. So that part of it. Exhale at the catch and the finish. Inhale on the drive and the recovery. 2 breaths per stroke. The stroke rate limits the breathing rate.
Right, yeah, it's not personal.
The other factor is tidal volume, how much oxygen you can get in and out of your lungs, and that's fixed genetically. Can't really alter that.
Friends who work for other
And
organizations.
in the end, again, what I said earlier is they'll figure it out, they'll breathe.
So tidal volume is capacity of lungs, basically?
Basically your lung capacity, which is fixed, you can't alter it all that much. You could do some training, you know, but
Girls have to bring their haircuts.
there's not much you can do to vary that. And it's, you know, if you had an athlete that you thought was doing pretty well and you wanted to see if they had the capacity to be an Olympic athlete, go have them measure tidal volume, and if it's not up to the highest level, then they don't have the shot. Was the summary there. Obviously, your oxygen absorption would play into that, but we're dealing with that in different areas of training. So I don't know if there's a difference. I presume there's a great deal of difference in the athletes he works with and what I work with, because I find that you have to remind them to breathe, and that they'll figure it out. They'll breathe isn't as intuitive for whatever reason for the demographics that I work with. And I think maybe if you have someone with asthma, you need to be proactive in reminding them to give them a breathing pattern at the beginning was something that he mentioned. But again, he basically sort of summarized, like, don't manipulate it too much. It'll happen. The exhale at the finish seems to be not too controversial. Is that how everyone feels?
Yeah.
Are you kind of in agreement with that?
And even when you're out on the river, you can hear certain boats that go through, and they're all breathing in sync. And,
Yeah.
they're at the finish.
Yeah.
You can hear them chugging along.
I think, I mean, so if you're at a 20, you can practice a certain pattern of breathing a coach teaches. The argument is if you're at 34 and in the 5th minute, are you really going to be, there's a lot to focus on, and that's just not going to be the thing that is worth having spent a lot of time manipulating. I'm not sure I agree with all this. I mean, I think that the physical restrictions are real. Tidal volume is tied to stroke rate. Whether the end-all be-all is you exhale at the catch and the finish, you inhale on the drive and the recovery. I don't know. I haven't decided whether I agree with that or not. But since it's Nolte, I feel like you really ought to agree with it.
I mean, did he give an actual reason for it, or?
So the exhale is associated with power breathing and being able to solidify the core, right?
Okay.
So if you exhale at the catch, then you're solidifying your core at the catch. You exhale at the finish, you're giving that support. The core structure of the breathing was discussed. I don't know that I got a clear.
Well, you're sort of crunched at the catch,
Well, and that would.
so you can't breathe in when you're all crunched over.
And the power breathing is something that the kettlebell talk also went into, saying that it'll, like, it sets you up for your most powerful output if you're doing the power breathing. So that's probably why at the catch, if you want to be set up for your most powerful stroke, you want to be aligned.
I've always kind of thought about it as, from a strength and conditioning side, as holding your breath equals bracing. Right, like when you squat,
Absolutely.
you
Right.
hold it at the bottom and you don't let out at the bottom.
Right.
So I've always kind of thought about it as exhaling so that you can compress more, and then as soon as you place the blade, big inhale so that your core stays solid and your ribs stay
Okay.
solid all the
Yes.
way through.
Do you find that you do then the, other than we're talking about on the drive, okay, and then the recovery?
Kind of hold it through the drive,
Yeah.
and then exhale at the finish, and then try to get another one on the recovery, and then exhale, hold it, back through again. That's how I've always thought about it. Does that fit what he said?
I don't remember like the exact, there were several people in that room that were getting everything like super off topic, and it was a little hard to like
Keep it focused.
keep it focused. A nulty sense of humor sometimes leads to its own tangents. But that makes sense. In my personal experience of rowing, I probably don't ever go above a 22 recently, so I'm like, really? You're gonna do that? But I haven't been at a 34 in a very long time, so. It would be really interesting to take a subset of rowers who play wind instruments and see, because they certainly have more control over tidal volume and their breathing capacity. In fact, there's some evidence that shows that it helps kids with asthma if they learn to play, because they're learning to control their breathing much better when they play clarinet or whatever. But if you take those kids and you try to teach them this,
Right.
they catch on fast because they already know how to, exhale over a certain length of time in a rhythm and all that.
The biggest PR was 48 seconds.
Wow.
And it was a freshman boy. It's like,
I feel like I've always taught it as
but I tell them,
strength
listen,
stuff
during
first,
math class today, were you
and then
thinking
you
about
kind of
rowing?
hope it
And
sort of
they're like, no.
transfers over to the rower.
It's the,
Or it
okay,
gets
so
them through the
during
first
rowing,
part in a way that they
let's
don't,
think
so
about
they have
rowing.
to.
Right.
Because in math, you were thinking about math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Or
during
sitting at the
tutoring,
catch
you know,
with
while
the,
you're being tutored in,
the
like,
blades buried in the water,
your 2 hours,
and then
you can't
exhale,
think anything
inhale,
about math.
and then drive
Anything
through.
about time
So they're
frame,
holding their
what
breath
it
through,
goes to
just as a
in these
drill
2
to
hours.
focus on
If
it.
you
But
focus on rowing,
to be honest, I don't think I've ever done much more than that. Done
Good.
that.
The 2 notes is your time work on breathing. I like that.
oh, like, and they're
Try to
like, so
manipulate
like
too
every
much
once in a
is
while
what
you
takes
see
so long.
one of the kids like
The
zone
cop
out,
scene
like,
part,
Ashley,
I need to go back to
what are you
that.
thinking about? And they're like,
So,
sorry,
Laura
sorry,
Simon
like,
is
like,
coxswain at Yale. I
thinking
believe
about my
she's on the
numbers.
national team.
and I'm like, well, cause you
I don't
went from,
remember all the
pulling a 210 to 240, like I can see in your mind, like
But
something
she
else
sort of
is going,
talked
like,
about all
but
the
you can see
coxswain,
it in your numbers.
sort of pointers is
And so I think
she
that
sort
we
of
kind of
accidentally
taken that
figured
and
this
kind
stuff
of-
out as she was like
We-
going,
we
because no one
shoot
ever
during the
taught her
fall,
or
kind of like,
anything.
hey, guess what?
No one ever
Now.
taught her.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it wasn't the deliberate thing that she was taught. She accidentally kind of stumbled into a lot of the sort of key things here. So the first thing she does with coxswains is they don't talk until they can figure out how to run parallel. Not by point. Not steering by point, which I really thought was interesting, because as an athlete I always heard my coach yelling about the most obscure possible points for our cock. He looked at the left wing on the bird on the tree down there on that side of the river. But and then so if you go by point alone, you give 2 coxswains basically the same point, or they're unclear on their points, what happens?
They do this or this.
Really, yeah, it's like they're trying to do some sort of like fancy blue angels like maneuver. But so if you teach them how to run parallel, then I drew something on the board. This is the illustration that's supposed to teach you about this. So here's the shore. Obviously it's not the Charles River. Boat A runs to the shore.
So,
boat
like,
B runs parallel to boat,
Yeah.
boat A.
I'm lucky that I'm unlucky.
No talking until you figure
Because
this
there's
out.
so few of them right now, but like.
Because she was able to show us a video of two of her coxswains just
Yeah, no, but that's actually a really good point.
in parallel. It was beautiful.
My college group.
Okay, so that's what we want first.
Okay,
And
you can make
I
a
think maybe on the Charles River that becomes a little different.
Coach on the Charles?
Right, like,
That'd be nice.
because there's both the shore and then the kayakers and then the
Bridges.
entropy, the coaches, the entropy of the Charles River. But I like that idea of running parallel around the point. I think that's what I expect in my mind. It's how I drive my launch.
Where do you drive your launch?
Well, sometimes here.
No, but relative to your cruise.
It depends on the situation. For sure depends on the situation. And I could like spin forever on that, and I don't think I could consciously bring it up.
Okay.
I was raised by herding dogs, and that has a lot to do with it. So the ability to run by side before you talk, and that gives them the priority of it's the steering part that is important, not the yapping part. Then the next thing Simon talked about was bring the coxswains in and make sure they know the technique that you want, and go over your language about whatever it is you're focusing on, the catch, the drive, the connection, finish, the recovery, whatever it is. Make sure they know your language, and so they can echo, and know all the little nuances of the different sort of positions or zones. And so with that, if they have an idea of, let's just say the catch, they have an idea of a series of things that needs to be involved just before the catch or in that moment of transition of the catch, then they can go through this formula. There's a problem in the area you're focusing on for the practice of the week. The catch is slow. ID the problem. Can they sort of find that and figure that out? If they can, and they know your language, they can, even if they don't know how to fix it, they can try one of the things in your language. The catch is slow, hands up into the catch. Maybe that gets the blades down the water a little quicker. So the coxswain tries that. Know how to fix it. Maybe they don't know, but they know of problems and sort of terminology around the catch. Execute the call. Okay, for the next 5 strokes, really specific, we're going to work on lifting the hands into the catch. They execute the call. And then they be quiet and listen to the boat. And try to listen or feel, was there a change? If yes, well, either way, give feedback. If yes, great, move on to next thing, or see how long they can hold it. If no, go back to ID the problem. Here's the problem. What's the next thing the coach talks about? Sit up into the catch. Okay, sit up, and for the next 5 strokes, we're going to sit up into the catch. Execute the call, keep it simple, and be specific. Shut up and listen. Did it change? Problem changed. If yes, great, you fixed it. How long can they maintain that? If not, go back to the beginning. ID the problem. Try to fix it with the coach's language. Execute the call. Needs to be really specific. Can't just be. Can't be general, right? Like give rowers a very finite amount of time to work on the problem. And then the silence is part of that equation. A moment to sort of evaluate the boat, feel it, listen to it, and then go into giving feedback. So just this process, it helps us as coaches, right? Because it's not vague or fluffy. You got it, girls. You can do it. Let's get them. Cut their hamstrings. It's a selection from my novice girls, or not my novice, my varsity girls. It has, none of those things are really helpful. This is empty the throttle. Empty the throttle. One of my.
That's a mixed metaphor.
Yep. Empty the throttle. Yeah.
And none of them can drive yet.
Right.
You sound vaguely speed-related words.
No, they were trying. So that was like encouragement that wasn't even accurate. But this, if she'll do this, I think we'll progress much better. Does that make sense for? Because this is a formula.
Yeah.
And I could give the kids a formula. That it's so specific. They can look at it, but it's what we do, right? You look at them, you look, what the hell is wrong with this?
The only tricky part with it that I can see is if you have like a novice coxswain, say, they need to have some understanding of what they're looking at first before they can use this successfully. Because like all of us, we have some level of understanding of how the rowing stroke works, and ergo we can apply that understanding and like interpret and figure out what they need to work on. The coxswains don't necessarily have that knowledge yet, or their knowledge is too incomplete for them to be able to make a good call, per se.
I think, yes, absolutely true. And it's a process through which they can learn that as well, right? They're troubleshooting their way through it. And so one thing that Laura Simon was talking about, the way that she tries to run her practices, and I think probably most of us do this, is like good practice. It's not like a grab bag or just like everything all at once. You try to take one focus for the week or the day, and so you're, again, let's say like the focus is catches this week, or the focus is longer, arms away, body over, early length, and that's what you're drilling home. So if you pull the coxswain aside and say, hey, this is what we're looking for, this is what we're talking about, here's some of the language that we're using for that, then if they can take just that one little nugget for that day or that week, okay, they talked about this, they talked about that, this is what we're looking for. They can like just regurgitate that information temporarily, then maybe they start to learn what that actually does. But you wouldn't expect novice coxswain to do all this with everything. So if you take one focus point at a time, then worst case scenario, they just learned the pattern on that day. And then the next day they do the pattern, but it doesn't really help. I'm not sure most of our novice coxswains are doing all that much for a cruise anyway, but
They're not hitting anything.
No, but if the question is...
Eventually, then it starts to become a tool that has some meaning, and they're intellectually engaging with it, not just going through the pattern. I think that's better than anything I've given them before. So even if it's not perfect, it's something.
So is it recommended like at the beginning of practice where like everyone's getting oars down, warming up, that's when you talk to them? Because I know it's sometimes tricky to find time to like go through a full
When do you find time to talk to your coxswain? Yeah.
So I'm just like, I've gone through all these things.
Coach Simon was basically saying that she was going to pull the coxswain aside at the beginning of the practice and go over that. I think.
And do you use visuals with that as well, or?
When I first right now.
That would be ideal. We're also talking about like an individual athlete at Yale working specifically with like a fourth varsity coach. Like, so that's the scenario in this particular example is very specific and limited, whereas we're probably all of us are trying to launch umpteen crews at a time, and if we're talking to high schoolers, it's like, oh, I hope something got through, okay? or masters rowers for that matter. One thing that was mentioned was during winter training, having the coxswains present and having them as an assignment during winter training. As a group, go get on the erg, and their topic is recover, or like the slide control. The topic is slide control. Go.
That's all she's thinking about, so I don't know.
Go. You four coxswains, go on the erg, play with it, and come up with your definition of slide control, key points, your language that you're going to use around it, and come back to the coach and let's discuss it as a group. So they're diving into that as like an intellectual subject separately, but that assumes your coxswains are available for that particular period of time, and that would be kinesthetic, right? Kinesthetic for one kid at a time, and then everyone else is watching. But I think the morning of or the afternoon of, that's, either you got to pull them aside, really set up a separate time for the coxswains, or you have to, well, you have to set a separate time for the cocktails to get a lot of that language in, I would think.
Yeah.
And we all,
I would agree.
I don't know about you guys, I always think about doing it, I always want to do it, and it just never happens. Or even when you're, even in those couple minutes before practice when you're trying to be like, so we're gonna go up the Charles River, and you're like, which way's up? Which way's upstream? Right, like even in those moments right before practice where theoretically you have 10 minutes where you could like communicate the stuff, that's not always what actually happens. So, in an ideal world, we're Dr. Strange and we can break the space-time barrier and have all the time in the world to work with our coxswains.
Or they stay after long enough for you to talk to them. Don't despair.
You guys have to switch groups so we don't run out of time.
Oh, switch groups. Yeah.
Alright, cool.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I won't laugh at you next time I see you.
No, you should have laughed. Collectively. Collectively, yeah. It was funny.
Carl and I were enjoying the moment.
No.
Stay the same.
We stay here.
You guys will stay.
Oh.
Just because you have all your stuff. Perfect. We'll have everybody shift over to the chairs. Get a little blood flowing.
I can't move.
Got it.
Trying to figure out how to share it anyway. My story, yeah. Thank you for holding Fergus.
Oh my gosh, it was awesome.
Feel free to keep playing with it.
I'm just getting my stuff out of the way.
Hello.
There's a lot of it. Where are you live?
It's on YouTube. It'll be recorded, so you can check it out later.
I get super camera right, so this is gonna be
There's no camera there.
No, I really don't. I really don't. I was on the speech and debate team. I love talking in front of people. I love the sound of my own voice. You guys are in for a treat. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly. No filter. Hi guys. Welcome to this side of the room. So as I mentioned in my intro there, at Joy of Sculling, which I keep calling footworks, at Joy of Sculling, two of the sessions that I really took stuff away from were implementing mental training and conversations and consequences. So, you know, you guys have all heard of mental training, right? It's like a hot button thing that we're talking about now with mindfulness and, you know, preparing our athletes, not only physically, but also mentally. And then also conversations and consequences aren't just the difficult conversations, right? They're not just, hey, you screwed up, this is the conversation that we're gonna have. It's also setting, you know, guidelines and requirements for your team at the beginning of practice, at the beginning of the season, things like that. So. So he does that all the time. I'm like, did I kill him? About to have a real difficult conversation over here. Mental training. Let's just jump in right there. What are some things that you guys do for mental training with your athletes? You know, before, during, after practice. How often?
The second part, or the like a large chunk of
I mean, I guess we ask them to come up before a test piece, come up with a plan, so they're not, they put some thought into it. We ask them, you know, college kids, they think they're so busy that they can't spend any time on anything, but we ask them to spend 5 minutes coming up with a plan and then pushing it aside so it's not taking care of, like, not covering their entire mental space.
Yeah.
But I have to say we don't do a ton of mental training. If someone's struggling, we're fortunate enough to have a sports psychologist. Kind of ship on all over.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sports psychology is becoming, you know, so much more prevalent in rowing even too. I was saying to the group before, Tim Pinot, I want to be him when I grow up. He's a clinical psychologist with a background in sports psych, and like, that's what I want to do. Someday CRI will hire me. And
So many, that's a separate
anyway, but you know, I think we do like on the college level, we do have sports psychologists like on staff that we can send our athletes to, and you know, and on the high school and middle school level too. There's also the school psychologist, right? So like if a kid is having an issue, know that that's a resource for you guys. Your school likely has a psychologist on staff. But something that we can bring that I learned from Tim Pinot's talks were just taking time at the beginning or the end of practice and just having quiet time. You know, I said it to the group before too. Do you guys ever do yoga? So like Shavasana, right? Like you just lay there. You don't necessarily have to lay there at the end of practice or before practice, but just having that quiet mental thinking about the day, you know, and bless you, and taking it in and accepting it and letting it go, and then being present for practice. You know, if you're going to do it before practice, if you're going to do it at the end of practice, just sort of assessing how practice went. You know, one of the things that one of my coaches says at the end of every practice when we're on the water is focus on these last 10 strokes, because they're going to be the best 10 strokes of tomorrow's practice, which I think is really neat. And so you just like, that's your focus, and that's sort of mental training in and of itself. So, you know, there's so many books that we can talk about, and Tim Pinot wrote one. And the name of it is escaping me right now, but we can get that for you. And so, do you guys anything? Claire mentioned something. Sam, do you do anything? And I'm picking on these two because I know their names, and I apologize. When you talk, please tell me your name. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
I'm Mary Kay.
I'm Mary Kay. Oh, you're Mary Kay. Davey talks very highly of you.
Oh dear.
That's Mary Kay.
I know, I was like, oh, you're Mary Kay.
Guys, that's Mary Kay.
Yeah.
Everybody knows your name now.
Okay, and I don't sell cosmetics.
You drive a pink Cadillac.
No, but we do, well, the varsity kids, like during winter training, they're doing the 2 minutes of quiet at the end of practice, but also we do okay, go around, tell us 2 things you learned today, and also 2 shout-outs or a shout-out for, you know, something.
Yeah.
So that's, now they're supposed to have like been thinking, they have to be able to say something at the end of the day. What did you learn? And so for novices, they tend to be more into the team build-up part than their I learned something, but you know,
Yeah.
by the end of the season, they get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Philip,
Hi, Philip.
and I don't personally. I don't do a whole lot for mental. About the only thing I do is I take kind of a similar approach to Mary Kay, where I have just a meeting at the end to sort of summarize what they learned and kind of bring it to a conclusion.
Yeah.
Say, okay, bye now.
See you, bye. Yeah. Yeah.
Wrap it up somehow.
Yeah. That's good.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Nick.
Hi, Nick.
And this is sort of what Dan implemented on our team last year. He coaches with me. Is that we use the warm-upper as sort of this is now practice time mentality.
Yeah.
And we try to focus on this sort of, right, that's the beginning of the start of practice. We've been extra careful about just sort of making it like about the process of rowing, as opposed to either just like 5 minutes of rowing, or trying to do something physically for your body. It's more about getting the frame of rowing and getting good strokes in, rather than like powerful warm-up strokes.
Right. Don't they love those? They love those powerful warm-up strokes. I feel like everybody I put on an erg, they're like, I'm like, what? Why? Yeah.
And like, I'm sorry, I lost your name already.
It's all right, Philip.
Thank you. Like Philip said, I like the group wrap up at the end of the day. I think it brings everything together, especially, well, maybe not going forward as much, but I coach 8 or 9 boats on the waters, small boats.
Okay.
So you're doing different things and possibly in different directions.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Is there anything you can do with your kids?
Yeah,
I know Tom's name too.
so yeah, I was lucky enough to work with Peter Steemstra this summer, and so he was actually coached by Jim Joy, and so he kind of had the mindfulness stuff passed down through him.
Yeah.
And so we were up at Bates doing the junior national team camp, and what he would run was at the end of practice, he would have everyone kind of sitting, doing some of that quiet sitting that people have talked about, and then he would lead them through kind of a guided mindfulness, and then through the couple weeks as all the guys were there, it would get more and more intense, I guess you could say. So we would start with just quiet sitting, can you actually sit there quietly for a couple minutes? Not necessarily for time, but just for till people start fidgeting.
Yeah.
And then we sort of worked through awareness. And so we were outside, and it was the summer, which was easy. And then he'd say, count the sounds you hear over 2 minutes.
Wow.
And we're in the woods of Maine, so there's actually was a fair amount of sounds.
Yeah.
And then he'd say, and then we'd finish, and he'd say, okay, now list. And he'd have one of the guys, or a couple people list what sounds they heard through that time, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. That's really unique.
It was a great one. And
Yeah.
then, and it was all about bringing awareness to what you're doing mentally, so that you can then take that awareness to mentally what you're doing with the aura.
Right, exactly.
And then let them work through that prompt, and then retell it out loud. So, for example, one of the prompts was you drive up to the driveway at your grandparents' house when you were little, or whatever age. You get to your grandparents' house, you walk up to the front door, and now go. And you'd spend 2 minutes visualizing what happened after you walked through the front door of your grandparents' house. And then, the quiz at the end was, what color was the door? Where was your grandparents standing? Was it one? Was it both? Was it none? Was it your parents? Was it your family? What color was the rug? Did you eat? Did you not eat? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really interesting because you had to actually visualize what was taking place, and then you can bring some of that visualization to sort of your race planning with the coxswain.
For sure, yeah. And I think, those are such easy drills to do, right? One of the things that Tim said was, really just bring it to practice daily, as much as we bring in training on the boat or on the water, et cetera, because it is something that we just sort of not take for granted, but just assume the athletes are gonna have, already honed that skill, and so that's something that we can help them with.
I love the idea of this quiet mindfulness, but I find this boathouse in particular is kind of impossible to implement.
Yeah.
So, especially when you have teams of 50 plus, how do you start to implement the mindfulness with them?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question.
We've had very large groups doing it. When we load the trailer up before a regatta, the kids go run and sit along the dock. Then it's usually a really quiet time at that point because there's no masters and everything. They can sit there, and it's very funny to see all these kids lined up on the dock sitting there, very quiet with their eyes closed. When occasionally we have quiet time up in the upstairs of our boathouse, but usually there's lots of other people, so that usually means they have to go find a corner of the boatyard where it's not as busy and sit and be quiet. So that doesn't always happen because of the same thing, because it is just, we have people coming, we have people going, and we're switching teams. So that we don't do it every day, at least my group doesn't.
And it's hard, it's sort of, it's the goal, right, to bring it in every day. And I know what you mean, this boathouse is, even when it is quiet, it's still loud. How is that? But, it's something that you can, the bus ride back to campus could be their quiet reflection, or their car, however they get to and from practice. Could be a nice way to implement, like, you don't necessarily have to run it. If you have someone that can kind of take point, maybe in the car or on the bus, and maybe the bus driver would appreciate it too, right? Shuttle, whatever they have, but, even if it just starts out like for one day, something to try, right?
And I think too, just being here for you guys midday, like it doesn't necessarily, the room doesn't need to be quiet for your mind to be quiet. Right, so if they're all sitting there with their eyes closed and relaxed and aware, you could try that, count the sounds. And maybe there's a lot, but
right, yeah, yeah.
That you'd at least kind of have something to keep them, focused on as they go.
Yeah. Expert on it. So the other session that I went to, I went to a lot of sessions, but the other one that I really took something away from was Conversations and Consequences with B.B. Bryan's. Having conversations, whether they're peer-to-peer, coach to coach, coach to athletic director, coach to athlete, coach to parent, coach to facilities maintenance person, coach to soccer, there's so many different spokes of that conversation wheel. Some good practices or best practices to have when having these conversations. The thing that I took the most from was listen. Say what you need to say, listen. Listen to what the response is. Listen to what the other person is bringing to their side of the conversation. Because I think as humans, we go into conversations already expecting what the other person is going to say. I don't know about you, but sometimes I have the two-way conversation with just myself in front of the mirror, and I have it planned out on what the other person is going to say, and so then I go to this difficult conversation or just regular conversation expecting, a certain response that doesn't happen. And then your tidbit that I got that's really important is not to react. So if you're having a conversation with an athlete, right, who's maybe making it a really difficult time for the rest of the team, sit down with them and just say, I want to talk to you about the effect blank is having on blank. You'll all get one of these cheat sheets here that BB passed out, and then listen and don't react. Just like if, let's say I'm having the conversation with Tom, he's a pain in the neck, and I'm like, dude, I want to talk to you about the way that your attitude has been affecting the team. And Tom comes back and is like, I ran over a dog on my way to practice today. And I'd be like, what? A dog? I can't do that because then, so just be like, okay. And then hear him out. So I'm going to hand these out now, actually. These are just really good. She actually had us fill this out, and we don't have to fill it out tonight, but it's something to take with you. I have it on my desk all the time now because you can plan the conversation from your end. It's not necessarily then expecting what their response is going to be, but just sort of planning it out so that you can go in prepared. The other thing, among other things that BB said was, be wholly present. Don't bring your phone. Don't, if she said that if an athlete walks into her office, she'll shut her computer, she'll turn her phone over, make sure it's on silent or whatever, so that she can solely focus on this particular conversation. So I have an athlete on one of my teams who drives me crazy. She drives me crazy. And I've had several conversations with her about how we can work together. Because she loses focus a lot, and it's really difficult because it disrupts practice and all of that. So she was on the top of my mind during this breakout session on how to have this conversation with her so that I can communicate with her on a level that's going to work for her. So are there any other, do you guys have any examples of conversations that you've had to have with athletes, coaches, parents, athletic directors, whatever, that you were just sort of dreading the conversation, and then you had it, and you were able to sort of come to a resolution? And you don't, you can be general.
We had one recently that actually didn't go to expectations. Like this one athlete has been struggling to be present at practice, and it didn't seem like she was happy on the team. So she came into the office to talk about like why she wasn't going on the winter trip. And you know, the coaches, we were calm, not reacting, but she reacted and stood up and said, "I quit," and walked out. So it was like something that we weren't expecting, but I think that like being able to not react kind of allowed her to get to the place that we were like I think trying to get out of her, but not in that manner.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
We'll see if she actually, we don't expect her to stay off the team,
Yeah.
stay quit, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
she just had to like express her emotions at some point.
Yeah.
But I think we allowed her to like say what she needed to say, and maybe we can hopefully move past it in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
That's my take on it, right? But then you they go,
Had an athlete quit several times, and she's still doing it as she moves up to the state. Things don't go her way, she quits, or she says she's gonna quit.
Right, like our ideal rowing Olympic is there. By the time
We try to get her, we give her space, we try to engage with her and discuss, hey, this is what the situation is. Sorry, it's not fitting to your model of what's expected, but this is what the team needs, this is what we are expecting from you. Can you provide that? Can you do what is expected? And if you can, great, but you have to do it with a good attitude. You know, cause just, well,
Yeah.
I think for the most part, it's taken way more effort than it should.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do, you know, you guys coach high school, college, college. Yeah, so I think like we're dealing with hormones, right? And college, they're away from home for the first time maybe ever, and in a different part of the country that they might not be used to, you know. So it's just like there's so many factors, right? Which can also, this is where sort of mental training and conversations sort of overlap each other. Just being able to be aware as coaches of what they are probably struggling with will make it easier for us to accept their side of the conversation, right? So that when they do jump up and say, "I quit," okay. You know, and hopefully they come back and they want to be, you know, a strong member of the team and all of that. So.
Sometimes if you can deal with things on a low enough level, you're surprised at who shows up the next year.
Yeah.
Hey, didn't really expect you back again, but great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I would say one thing that's worked pretty well for us, obviously on the college level where there's a little bit more time at practice and things like that, is on Saturdays, the captains run their own team meeting, and then right after there's kind of elected officials, I guess you could say, from each class. A couple of the guys from each class come down and then meet with all the coaches.
Oh, okay.
Every Saturday there's a place for everyone to kind of voice their concerns and air out any issues or suggestions for going forward. And I don't know, I've seen this year it's actually worked really well because we haven't really gotten to any of those like boiling point moments much, because there's just so many opportunities to say what people want to say or speak for the team or things like that. So it may be something to consider, just more frequent meetings with the team or with the upperclassmen.
I like the idea of, sorry, I like the idea of the representatives from each class. I think that's really neat.
What I was gonna say, what I like about that too is that they have limited to 20 minutes, right? So that you're respectful of their time, and anything that needs to be brought up gets brought up quickly. And I don't know, that's what I've heard. So it sounds like it's mutually effective, not taking entire Saturdays from everyone.
Yeah, it's pretty short. Everyone gets the shower and then they have their meeting and then they come down and meet with the coaches afterwards. So pretty succinct.
Yeah, that's great. Do you guys have any questions or concerns, comments, anecdotes, snide remarks?
I struggle with is that I'm not someone who has no filter. Like I'm kind of
It's not a good thing.
I'm kind of a quiet person, so building it up to have the difficult conversations can sometimes be stressful and overwhelming. So I don't know if you have tips on like how to get yourself to that conversation.
I think building a relationship with the athletes, you know, so that they know that you're gonna have a difficult conversation, but that you still respect them, you know, despite what it is that you're gonna talk about. That helps, and I think, like, I'm a super softie at practice. I'm like, come on, guys, let's just do this. But then, like, having to have a conversation, I'll just be like, listen, this is really difficult, and I want to make sure that we're on the same page, and because, you know, we're all here for the same reason. We're all here to be a part of this team, and to do well, and to grow together. One of the things that helped with this particular athlete that I have had multiple conversations with was at the beginning of the season, we stood around. There's five people on the team, and we stood around, and I was like, what's your personal goal? What's your team goal? Like, what is your goal from me? And I wrote them all down, and so when this one athlete started to sort of make practices more difficult, I had, you know, one-on-one conversation with her, and I was just like, listen, we talked about what our goals were, and what your personal goal was, what your goal for the team was, and what your goal for me was. And luckily, her goal for me was to be honest with her, so I was like, all right, we're going to be honest here, you know, your attitude is kind of crummy, and how can we change that focus, you know? So I think I worked in fundraising for a really long time, and I think that helps me with these conversations, because asking for money for an organization is different than asking for money for you, right? And so being a coach, it's not personal, it's for the greater good. It's for the greater good of the team. And so bringing that to the conversation, I think, helps, because you're not hurting my feelings, you're hurting these four other, finding a way to be sort of a whole rather than an individual, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I definitely think asking the questions at the beginning of the season, even for novices, saying, okay, what's your personal goal? What are you going to do for the team? And inviting them to think about and writing down so that you have that piece of paper, so that later in the season, when you have an attitude from one kid in particular who decided she wasn't going to go to any regattas because they conflicted with church. And all our regattas are on Sundays, you know, and I'm like, but it wasn't communicated to me, and on her goal sheet it was win a medal at a regatta. Well, you gotta show up if you're gonna win a medal at a regatta.
Yeah.
And you can't take someone else's seat in a boat if you're not gonna compete. You know, I'm not gonna put you in the race lineup. And she got really mad at that. And it exploded from there, but part of it, I mean, I had that piece of paper that said, here's your goal. These are the things you said you were going to do for yourself and for the team. You know, I get that you're a freshman, you know, and I'm trying to be very clear with our expectations for what, you know, we're expecting from the season. And, you know, the fact that you've decided 3 weeks or 2 weeks in front of a regatta that you're not going to show up, and now you're mad, I'm not going to put you in the boat. You know, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that just, you know, I had to get the athletic director involved in that one, but she came back the next year.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Was there any was there any talk about having conversations with another coach along with the athlete?
Like as a like 2 and 1 in the same room, like safe sport.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want to talk about that? 'Cause I can riff on that for
Not specifically. Not specifically. I should say not specifically that I recall. I can look through the presentation that one and see. You know that BB told a story of like she didn't give me tips really, I should say, but she did tell a story about one time there were a couple of athletes that were causing some issues, and they had to go in front of the entire coaching staff and have a conversation. And the anecdote was, you know, the coaching staff sat on one side of the table and the athletes came in and sat on the other. And from my understanding, I think it was like 2 or 3 athletes on the other side of the table, and the coaching staff sat there in silence and just waited for the athletes to say why they were there, you know. And so I don't know if that really answers your question, but
No, I mean, a lot of the conversations that I've had, I mean, I haven't been coaching for umpteen years or anything, but it's been usually with another coach. I mean, if it's sort of an athlete that's been a problem, it's been that, and you know, it's a small coaches room, so it's like we're all packed in there, and I'm not sure if that's the best environment, but sometimes depending on the situation, the athlete, it could be, it could be pretty good.
Yeah, because I think about, you know, even here at CRI, the coaching office is large, but there's so many coaches in there at one time.
Yeah.
You know, and to have an athlete sort of walk into the lion's den, right? So I know I've seen coaches have one-on-one conversations with athletes in the admin office because there's usually not people there during practice time. I think I wish that I had another coach to be with me when I have these conversations with this athlete, because you know, you can kind of play not good cop, bad cop, but you can both bring pieces to the table, right? And maybe this athlete isn't comfortable talking to me, but they would be comfortable talking to another coach on staff.
Sure.
Motivation.
I'm just the only coach, so they're stuck with me.
You're doing so great.
They have people on campus that they can talk to, like my advisor there. But yeah, it's hard.
Did you say anything about coach to coach at all, or was it mostly just coach athlete?
It was mostly just coach athlete. Yeah. I mean, she mentioned it in the PowerPoint, and it was like, you know, just the main focus was just be respectful of each other, listen, set a precedent at the beginning of the season, so that way, you know, you have it. Like these are the expectations we have for the team, for the coaches, whatever. So that way, when you do have to have, if and when you do have to have a conversation, it's sort of like, okay, well, I already agreed to this, so I understand why we're having this conversation.
Highlight, if it's facts highlighted, if it's motivation highlighted in this point, if it's filler,
What do we got for time?
underlined.
Getting close. Oh, we're actually over.
That's how we roll.
Does anybody have any last minute thoughts or anything?
Like, honey, that's not information.
Feel free to use this, like BB was like, take it, use it, sell it, whatever. I may have made that up, sorry. Maybe.
That's it.
Yeah. I'll give you royalties.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed her talk. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So if any of you guys have questions about the coaching roundtables in general, or CRI, or anything listed on the board, feel free to reach out to me. Did you all get the email that I sent out about this one?
Yes. Yeah.
Good. So you have my contact info, and then these guys from SportsYou are around to answer some more questions if you want to stay as well. But if not, you guys are free to go and enjoy the holidays.
Thank you.
too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Where I want them. What I want.
Take your pens too, the pens are really great.
Yeah.
So you have to unclick them.
They're fancy schmancy.
You gotta hit the
I'm always in for a new pen.
yeah.
Yeah.
I, as a grower, my
How'd you break your? I was putting a safety light on my flat bottom. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How?
Safety first. So.
Safety second, apparently.
I had, you know how like, so at Stoller, the suction cup is on the bottom and then like sticks up, and I just went like that, and I went down,
Okay.
and I
Yeah.
ripped it just the right way, and fourth metacarpal spiral fracture, and I can't stay tomorrow in 6 weeks. And it was great, because it was like the last day of single sculling anyway, so I was like, guys, I'll just body tape. I thought it was like,
Did you coach the session?
I wanted to. They wouldn't let me. They were like, coach, you're in shock. I'm like, I'm not in shock. I drive the 5 over with my left hand. I'm fine. And they were like, no. Whatever. You just don't want to practice. Come on.
But that's remarkably how it happened to me last spring, is as I took off my picky fingernail, I almost degloved it.
I just learned
Yeah.
what that was. Someone was talking about that.
They did typically have it in their legs when they like get shut in.
Yeah. Right. Somebody was talking about someone who degloved their pinky finger. Oh, Kane Laram was telling me a story about it.
Yeah, no, I was trying to start my engine. The pull cord or the spring on my engine is notoriously not effective.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of slack. So I was yanking it hard, and it wrapped around my finger, and I yanked it, and I'm like, oh. And I was like, well, fingernail's gone, I think.
Yeah.
Well, nothing else. The best part of the story, by far, is it's the only time that season that I had a college coach went with me to watch all my rowers.
Where do you coach at?
Lakeland Sigma?
Oh, okay. On the Worcester side?
Yes.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, we're the finish line boathouse.
Okay. Regatta.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I wrote out a deal.
Yeah, but no, so I'm like, I'll be right back. And I put like the world's worst bandage on and then put a glove on it.
Yeah,
He's
you're
like,
like,
you okay? I'm like, I'll go to the hospital later, but I'm fine.
Right up the hill. You had plenty of time.
Oh no, that's the best part is, so he was there, and then I had to rush back here to Medford to go to work.
I have a dog.
And then like on this river when you get near the
Oh, yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
right on down the dark part of the really dark part.
All right, thanks for an awesome CRI Coach Talk. We'll see you guys in January.
Please take me a
Yeah,
hospital.
and maybe 55 pounds of water.
And of course they get there like, it's 11:30 at night.